What's the deal, family? Welcome back to the channel. Today we got another banger for y'all, man. So look, we got another making the case. 1989 Pistons. We about to run it up, man. You know we going through the making the case teams, man. I'm like halfway through. I think after this I got like 3 more teams. I did the 01 Lakers, 87 Celtics, 71 Bucks, 96 Bulls. Then I got, so I think I got 3 more teams after this, man. So make sure to go back and look at the teams I already did. And be on the lookout for the new teams that's coming up. Also, what's it called? I reacted to the making the case for all the players, like all the best players of all time. I did that like 2 years ago. Make sure to go check those out too. Let's get to it. 89 Bad Boy Pistons.
To win, right? But not just to win individual games. The ultimate goal is to win a championship. Of course, basketball is a team sport. Championships are won by the most complete, most inspired team. Every champion deserves credit, but the question on my mind is, who's the greatest team of all time?
2001 Lakers.
With apologies to Bill and Wilt, I have a list of 8 teams since 1970 that I want to look at as having a claim to that distinction. It is a loaded question, and one that I ultimately can't answer. Is it the teams that were frontrunners from beginning to end? The ones who were unbeatable at their peak? Maybe the ones who tapped into something special and overcame countless obstacles? There is no right answer.
Kobe!
It's your job to make your own call. And it's my job to make the case. So today, I'll be making the case for the 1989 Detroit Pistons as the greatest basketball team of all time.
It's a good team, man. It's a good team. Bad Boys it was the Bad Boys, man. Let's go.
You need people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
The Bad Boys. Perhaps the most notorious collection of bruisers and tough guys ever to play basketball. If you lived through it and you weren't from Detroit, odds are you hated the Pistons. Not just because they defined what a physical brand of defense looked like, but because they also kicked your team's ass at one point or another. They finished the regular season with a 63-19 record, lost only 2 playoff games, and boasted one of the vaunted defenses in basketball history. They ran 9 or 10 men deep, led by Isaiah.
Like, you know a team is nice when you know all the names, bro. Isaiah, Joe Dumars, Bill Laimbeer, Dennis Rodman, Rick Mahorn. Come on, man. Adrian Dantley, John Sally. Come on, man. Them bros was gangster.
Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars in the backcourt, Bill Laimbeer in the middle, Dennis Rodman, Adrian Dantley, and later Mark Aguirre as the forwards, Rick Mahorn at the 4 spot, and Vinnie Johnson, John Sally, and James Edwards coming in as reserves. Let's go ahead and get one thing straight. The Pistons are villains. What else would you call a team that threw more elbows, dealt more hip checks, and delivered more hard fouls than anyone? Watch any basketball documentary. Listen to any old interview. It's impossible to arrive at a different conclusion. Everyone hated them. Pippen, Jordan, Bird, McHale, Parrish, Worthy, reporters, announcers, commentators, executives, and fans alike pined for the heads of the Pistons. They were the villains. You might point out the fact that Bill Laimbeer goes down as perhaps the most hated athlete who never did anything illegal. He bumped, shoved, pushed, and jawed against everyone, with special treatment saved for the league's most popular stars. Concerns were raised.
People talking about how Larry Bird, is one of the greatest trash talkers of all time, and from the videos I've seen, I'll give it to him. He definitely up there with Jordan in it. But Laimbeer, he might not be the trash talker, you know what I mean? But that motherfucker, you know when they say, actions over words, you know what I mean? Actions over, yeah. He might not have been hitting game winners like Bird and all that, I get, all right, I respect that. Bird is on a different area when it comes to trash talking game winners and just, athlete, But Bill Laimbeer ain't give a fuck about nothing. Probably most gangster white boy ever to play the NBA, dog. I'm just being real, dog. Just being real, bro. He ain't care about nothing. In the league with all these hood dudes and shit, back in the late 80s, he held himself down. I ain't gonna lie. Bird too, though. Don't get me wrong, 'cause I know the Bird people gonna be all up in the comments, man, but Laimbeer ain't give a fuck.
That his style of play wasn't just physical, it bordered on the intent to injure other players. You might remember the comments made by Rodman and co-signed by Isaiah after the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics, in which the two asserted that if Larry Bird were black, he'd be just another good player.
But I'd have to agree with Rodman. If he was black, he'd be just another good guy.
Add in the fact that Isaiah had the taste of sour grapes because of his infamous stolen inbounds pass in Game 5, and the Pistons looked downright petulant. Toss in the walkout after the 91 Eastern Conference Finals and a general air of intimidation and lack of sportsmanship from nearly the entire roster, and you could say that the reputation of the bad boy Detroit Pistons preceded them. That they were and have always been the villains. And you would be right. And that, my dear viewer, is exactly what the Pistons wanted. It's what makes them great villains, and what makes them a great basketball team. This team is layered. On the outside, you have the infamous physicality, the bully ball, the bad boy namesake. This fed into an entirely intentional and calculated strategy in which the Pistons sought to contest their opponents mentally. They wanted their opponents more preoccupied with where the next hit was coming from than with winning the basketball game. And you'll notice that through all the infamous scraps that the Pistons were ever involved in, they rarely threw the first punch. Agitate, don't retaliate. Instigate, don't initiate. None of it would have worked, nor been possible, had the Pistons not been ludicrously talented.
True. That's true.
And what brought it all together was the same thing that is at the heart of only the greatest of champions, only the most superlative teams. A deep, genuine, authentic bond and belief in each other. At the heart of the Pistons was the fact that they were a team. The physicality was what it was. Now, I don't condone what they did. At times it had an essence of brutality. Basketball is a better sport without it. But it did make possible an improbable championship run at a time when they weren't supposed to be there. It was an approach built almost out of necessity. The 80s belonged to Bird and Magic, and as Michael Jordan began his ascent, it was clear that he would soon inherit the league. No one allocated the time nor the space for a blue-collar team from Detroit without a single player averaging over 20 points to inject themselves into basketball history. Head coach Chuck Daly and Isaiah realized that this team couldn't win by playing the way the Celtics played. They couldn't win playing the way the Lakers played.
Facts.
They didn't have a Michael Jordan. They had to find an edge. And so they exploited the fact that at that time in the NBA, a foul was just a foul. You could get ejected for overtly malicious acts. You could get a technical foul for arguing a call or for technical infractions. But a clothesline was penalized the same way that a reach-in was. To gain an advantage, the Pistons became willing to go where no other team had gone before. They bucked sportsmanship, skipped over gamesmanship, and went to work on their opponent's psyche. Of course, none of this would have mattered. None of the mind games or the shit-stirring would have done the Pistons a lick of good had they not been one of the deepest, most complete teams to ever compete in the NBA. Bill Laimbeer, as we've established.
I feel like that's a part that gets overshadowed with them. Like, everybody talks about the Pistons and, like, they only talk about, they were dirty. They were the bad boys. Like, things like that. But they never talk about, like, the skill. Right? Like, the talent, the skill, the depth. Like, they never really talk about those. It's always overshadowed with, like, they were dirty. They played violent. Like, that's all that people talk about with this. But they were a squad. If we being honest.
Was the league's premier antagonist. But his antics overshadow his tremendous defensive abilities, his exceptional rebounding instincts, his peerless durability, and the fact that he remains among the sweetest shooting centers ever. He averaged a 14 and 10 on 50% shooting, despite the fact that he didn't have a post move to speak of in an era that was still predicated on play down low. His quick trigger on a shooting stroke made Laimbeer an essential pick and pop player, something that was nearly as alien in 1989 as a smartphone. Just as important, he never tried to be something that he wasn't. He knew he wasn't as good as Parrish, or Kareem, or McHale, or Olajuwon. He couldn't dream of competing athletically with the great centers at the time. So, he operated with intent, exploiting position, intelligence, tenacity, and physicality to command the court like a chessboard. He wore the black hat. He winked at the cameras when he knew that millions of fans were screaming at their TV sets. To the world, he provided a face for the bad boy image, a lightning rod for their controversy. To the team, he provided the spirit and the motor for everything they tried to do. Speaking of controversial guys with high motors, Dennis Rodman.
Yep. Young Dennis, too.
Now keep in mind, this was not the Dennis Rodman with the hair and the tats and the high-profile relationships. This version of Rodman was young, hungry, and motivated chiefly by his desire to prove that he belonged on a championship NBA roster. His rapid development necessitated a midseason trade that we'll talk about later, but Rodman spent the majority of the year coming off the bench. Despite limited minutes, Rodman averaged nearly a double-double and was a first-team all-defensive selection. The most important thing to know about Rodman is that he cared. He cared a lot. He fought for rebounds, dove for loose balls, took defensive assignments personally, and paid no mind to speed limits. He was full throttle, foot on the gas, at all times. He cried when he won Defensive Player of the Year in 1990. He pumped his fist after taking every charge. Though he wasn't a scorer, young Rodman was an athlete on the level of Shawn Kemp and Charles Barkley and belongs in the Chamberlain, Russell, Moses class of rebounder. At 6'7", he was the quintessential defender in the league. He could be stuck on anyone, from John Stockton to Scottie Pippen to Robert Parrish. No matchup was too big for him, and he consistently raised his level to that of his opponent throughout his career, whether it was Larry Bird or Shaquille O'Neal. As much as I've enjoyed and will continue to enjoy pushing the villain narrative with these Pistons, the fact is not everyone played rough. In fact, if you didn't know any better, would you believe me if I told you that the player for whom the NBA's annual sportsmanship trophy is named played for the '89 Pistons? It's true. Since 1996, the player who most exemplifies the ideals of sportsmanship on the court, with ethical behavior, fair play, and integrity, is awarded the Joe Dumars Trophy. Joe Dumars might not have shared the same attitude as some of the rest of the Pistons, but he was as vital to the team as any player, combining with Isaiah to form one of the scariest backcourts you can imagine. As a scorer, he was as well-rounded as anyone in the league. He wasn't a high flyer, but he could attack the basket, make his free throws, swing the ball around, and nail shots from all over the court. As a defender, I think I need only tell you that Michael Jordan cites Dumars as the toughest cover he ever faced in the NBA. Like Rodman, he was a first-team All-NBA defensive selection, perhaps even more impressive considering he didn't resort to cheap shots. Dumars goes down as one of the more nightmarish two-way matchups ever, capable of torching defenders like Michael Cooper and putting the clamps on even the likes of Michael Jordan.
I'm sure he's going to say this at some point in this video, but also, the Pistons are known for being the creator of the Jordan rules, right? Like doubling up, triple teaming, double teaming. As soon as you get the ball, hard fouls, things like that. Like they essentially were the originators of the Jordan rules, man. That you see a lot, like nowadays. You see it a lot more nowadays, but they were the originators. And if it wasn't for them, who knows? Jordan might have like 7. He might have like 7, 8. You know what I mean? Like, just being honest.
Averaging 27 points a game in the finals on a scorching 57% field goal percentage, Dumars' 1989 Finals MVP serves as a testament to the balance of the Pistons and to just how damn good he was. Rick Mahorn stood as a brick wall next to Laimbeer, similarly unafraid to get his hands dirty, set hard screens, grab rebounds, and make his presence known. Vinny the Microwave Johnson came off the bench to the tune of 14 points a game. As his namesake implies, the Microwave could get hot in a hurry and feasted on opposing reserve units. John Sally and James Edwards were players more out of the Joe Dumars mold, in that they weren't complete assholes. But both men played key roles in the team's championship effort. Sally on the defensive end with his hellacious blocks, and Edwards on the offensive end with his unstoppable fadeaway. Leading the show with an incandescent smile that betrayed one of the most competitive minds in professional sports was Isaiah Thomas. Spend any amount of time researching Isaiah Thomas's basketball career, and you will hear a number of things over and over. First and foremost, that he remains the best pure point guard of all time.
Facts.
That isn't to say he's the best point guard of all time, but when it comes to what you would want out of a traditional point guard: speed, quickness, vision, passing ability, inside scoring, defense, toughness, leadership, and a dependable jump shot, Isaiah checks the boxes as well as any player who has ever played the position. He's on the short list of being one of the only point guards who can say that they were the best player on a championship-winning team, alongside Magic Johnson and Steph Curry. Isaiah's stock has always been something of...
And almost Allen Iverson. But... now, he ain't the Lakers, you know what I mean? Them Lakers, though, you know? Almost Allen Iverson, though. But them Lakers, though, you know what I mean?
of debate, and most of that is his own fault. Of course, the reputation of the team and their ability to make enemies out of everyone did him no favors in the moment. No one wanted to talk about how great Isaiah was. They went to bed at night dreaming of Isaiah getting rocked by Hulk Hogan. Because he managed to piss off so many stars, when they came together and formed the Dream Team in the summer of '92, Isaiah was famously left out.
Yeah.
He hasn't done himself any favors in his post-playing career, embarrassing himself as an executive and coach, and prolonging his feud with Michael Jordan by asserting that LeBron James is the greatest player ever. He will always lose the popularity contest. Even people who never saw him play hate him, because the legends of the game hate him. None of this is to make you pity Isaiah. When you choose to play like he did and cultivate a reputation that way, you have to live with consequences like this.
That's true.
But those aren't the only reasons Isaiah gets discounted. Isaiah could take over games at a moment's notice. He did it all the time, which is why his blunder in '87 is even more shocking. Isaiah lived for the big moments. But the thing that made him special was that he sought basketball of the highest order. He didn't want to have to take over games. He didn't care about making All-NBA teams or winning MVPs. He wanted to win, and he wanted to win with a team of guys who bought into a culture of accountability and camaraderie. He gave up shots and minutes so that Dumars and Vinnie Johnson could develop. He cultivated the culture like a garden, meticulously tending to its needs, encouraging and ensuring that it grew in all the right ways. In his eyes, a team was a lot harder to stop when you had to worry about 9 guys who could beat you than it was to stop 2 or 3. It's why the team's statistics don't jump out at you. They played a style of basketball between the lines. The balance of the Pistons roster, their flexibility and versatility, would not have been possible had Isaiah not been so willing to sacrifice his own success for the greater good. You might think that's hokey, and you might think that's bullshit, but it's true. When you talk about that era of basketball, there are 4 names that matter more than all the others: Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, and Isaiah Thomas.
This is facts.
And oh, by the way, Isaiah has a winning playoff record against each of those other 3 players.
That I did not know. So when matched up against those other 3 guys, Larry Bird, Magic, and Michael, he has the advantage. That's something I never knew. And that makes a big difference. I already had respect for the Pistons, but now I got a little bit more. I'm not gonna lie to you. If you watching this video and you don't got a little bit more respect for him either, you in your feelings. You just in your feelings. And it's all good. You got a major bias and you in your feelings. That's okay. That's okay. I get like that with the Celtics, so it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? I'm a Laker fan, so I get it. But I'm just saying, the fact that he has an advantage over all these guys speaks volumes. That means if the Pistons were to match up against these guys in the playoffs, it's more likely you roll the dice, they gonna win. Think about that. So you gotta think some of these teams is lucky to an extent that they didn't have to match up with them in certain cases. Luck of the draw type of situation. It's interesting when you think about it like that.
If you want proof of the Pistons' culture, look no further than the Adrian Dantley trade. A 6'5" scoring machine that would one day end up in the Hall of Fame. Dantley arrived in Detroit in '87 and immediately made an impact. He gave the team an offensive dynamic that they'd been missing for years and helped propel the franchise to contender status. But by '89, Rodman's development was reaching a level that necessitated that he be on the court at the end of games instead of Dantley. Dantley, a 12-year NBA veteran, was unwilling to make room. So the team traded him for Mark Aguirre. The same Mark Aguirre who was only available on the trade market because he had worn out his welcome in Dallas after conflict with coaches and teammates. You might argue about who was the better individual player between Dantley and Aguirre, but Aguirre came to the Pistons with something to prove. It was made clear to him from day one by Lambeer and Isaiah that he was expected to buy in, to sacrifice for the good of the team, to do what Dantley couldn't.
And if he don't, he might get his ass whooped at practice. You know what I'm saying? He gonna have some tough practices if he don't. That's one of them teams. You know what I'm saying? You better get with the program, because if you don't, you do what you was doing over in Dallas over here, you gonna have some tough practices, my boy. You gonna want to get up out of here. For real. Don't play with him. But I'm gonna reset real quick.
It worked. Aguirre went from averaging over 25 points a game over his last 5 full Dallas seasons to 15 a game as a Piston in '89. With his incendiary scoring abilities from the post and Rodman's defensive versatility on full display, the Pistons flourished. In the 50 games between Aguirre's first game and the Pistons hoisting the championship trophy, the Pistons went 44-6. They swept Bird Celtics in the first round.
Damn!
Swept the Bucks in the second round.
Swept.
They swept Bird Celtics in the
Sweep. 4-0. 3-0. I think back then it was 5 games, so 3-0.
first round. Swept the Bucks in the second round. Fended off Jordan's Bulls in 6 to set up a rematch with the Lakers in the finals, and sauntered their way to a championship sweep against the defending champions.
Swept the Lakers. The defending champion Lakers. Showtime Lakers. Beat the Bulls in 6. Swept the Celtics in 3. This is what I say when I say, dog, they only talk about how tough they were and not how good they were. People, this probably, out of all the teams on the list, of all the teams that's on the making the case list, this is easily the most slept on team. Even more than the 71 Bucks. Because everybody knows they had Oscar Robertson and Kareem, and that alone, you're going to remember that. But I feel like out of all those teams, this is the most slept on one, where people are going to be like, oh, they were just bullies. No, they were nice. The other teams on this list, they beating them. I know it's not the same years, but I'm just saying.
Now I'll be the first to point out that the Celtics were past their prime in dealing with injuries.
True.
That Byron Scott missed the finals because of a hamstring injury before Game 1.
Fair.
That Magic was himself hampered by a hamstring injury in Game 2. But the '89 Pistons aren't the greatest team of all time because of who they beat to win their first championship. They're the greatest team of all time because of how they won that championship. The Pistons were designed to beat those teams at their peaks. Just because the Pistons got lucky at the same time they were peaking takes nothing away from how good they were, in my eyes. What do you want? Do you want a team that can defend in the post? Ask any big man from
I mean, if you're being objective, you could argue that they still could have beat the Celtics if Isaiah didn't fuck up on that pass. It's a tough argument to make, but it is an argument.
that period about what it was like to play against Lambeer, Mahorn, and Sally. Do you want to shut down scoring from the guards? Look no further than the greatest defensive backcourt ever in Isaiah and Dumars. And if there's any player that's too big for the guards and too quick for the big men, Dennis Rodman is waiting in the wings as one of the most devastating individual defenders that the game has ever seen. The scoring could come from anywhere. The synergy of the team was such that they would feed those hot hands and usually heat up themselves to crush you in a million different ways from every direction. The scoring disparity between their leading scorer and their ninth man was 11 points a game. That's
crazy.
The same scoring disparity between Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen in 1996. They passed brilliantly. They played without ego. They could shoot. They could score inside. They could penetrate. Ironically, the bad boys played a very unselfish style of basketball that, were it not for the hostility of their attitude, would have had basketball purists singing their praises.
You could even make an argument that they were like the evil twin of like the early 2000s San Antonio Spurs, early mid 2000s San Antonio Spurs. You could argue they were their evil twin in basketball comparisons because everybody played well. Everybody played their role and their part. You know, you could really fundamental ball. Like you could really Tony Parker to Isaiah, Tim Duncan to Lambeer or David Robinson, right? A Ginobili compared to a Dumars. Like you could really argue that they were like their evil twin before they were around. But if you compare the two teams, it's like you got the good versus evil side of things, whatever. You could argue that, honestly. I never thought about that before, but I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, you could low-key argue that.
This team had an identity as
Kawhi Leonard, Dennis Rodman. You see where I'm going with this?
the villains. They embraced it. It brought them closer together. As the rest of the world got more hostile, the Pistons got closer. To a man, they all speak of each other not as co-workers, but as friends and brothers in arms. Yeah, they were the bad guys. But give me a great villain over a decent hero every day of the week. They're so much more interesting.
True.
The best heroes are the ones who have to overcome their flaws, and the best villains are usually the ones with something humanizing about them. Look at Isaiah's Game 6 in the '88 Finals, the year before this championship team. He was rolling in the third quarter with his team up 3-2 against the Lakers. He was doing everything in his power to launch his team over the finish line. And with his franchise's first championship just 20 minutes away, the unthinkable happened.
Didn't he get hurt?
Fast break situation. Streaking down the court,
Yeah.
he rolls his ankle. He hits the floor and reaches out, instinctively grasping at the referee as he tries to stomach the pain. His ankle is sprained. Badly. On the bench, he clenches his teeth, summoning every bit of willpower he possesses. The Lakers take advantage and surge back to take the lead. And then, hobbled and limping, Isaiah returns to the game. What follows is one of the gutsiest performances in the history of championship competition.
3.5 remaining in this period. Thomas with a looper scores.
Gotta respect.
Thomas off balance, basket counts and a foul as he goes into the first row and he is still limping. Thomas goes for three and hits it. What a third quarter for Isaiah Thomas.
Gotta
Now
respect.
the Pistons with Rodman. 2-on-1. Thomas goes up. And Isaiah Thomas having an incredible period. He has 35 in the game, 23 in this period. And the Pistons have regained the lead. 23 points. And the shot again by Thomas. It is 81-79. The period is over. Can you imagine the great performance? Maybe one of the best we've ever seen in one quarter.
Come on, bro. That's up there with like flu games. That's up there with, Kobe coming down and hitting the free throws after tearing dang, what's that part of your whatever, after he messed up the back of his foot. Achilles, after tearing his Achilles. Like, that's up there with those type of games, bro. Magic Johnson coming out at center because Kareem was hurt. Like, it's up there. That one dude, was it Moses Malone? I forgot his name, but he came out from the stands after going through an injury. Like, that's up there. But nobody talks about it because you're supposed to hate on him. You know what I mean? Nobody talks about it because you're supposed to hate them. But I don't really hate them. You know what I mean? I've been the villain in my life. I've been the villain in my life, so I get it. I can resonate with it. Come on, man. He put his heart and soul into it.
NBA Finals history.
He finished the quarter with 25 points, the most ever in a single quarter of a finals game. The game would end on a pair of Kareem free throws following a controversial foul call against Lambeer. Karma, some would say, for all the fouls he got away with in years prior. The Pistons would lose Game 7 as Isaiah watched most of the second half from the sidelines. In light of that effort and that heartbreak, how can you watch the Pistons celebrate in '89 and not feel, if only for a minute, that they deserved it? They didn't cheat. They didn't cheat the rules, they didn't cheat the game, and they didn't cheat themselves. They earned every bit of what they achieved.
Yep.
The 1989 Detroit Pistons were willing to do whatever it took, at whatever cost. Listen to the way Lambeer talks about their approach. He sounds like Sun Tzu. Break the spirit of their leader, and you'll break the spirit of their unit.
Art of War.
You couldn't come up with something that the Pistons didn't already have an answer for. And there have been few teams since that can boast a deeper, more versatile roster. Their masterful play, their inspired defense, their remarkable selflessness, and their ability to win games without scoring a layup make the Bad Boys the greatest basketball team of all time. They were willing to do whatever it took. And what it took was to become the villains.
Yo, I love the way I love the way he did that video. I was thinking he was gonna talk about the Jordan rules thing, but I guess he didn't. But I love the way he did that video. And yeah, man, the Pistons were like that. If you slept on them, get your education up, dog, because they were really like that, man. And if it wasn't for a few mistakes or a few things here and there, I mean, dog, like little things too. It wasn't like, oh, this. They'd at least have 2 rings for sure, but shit happens. Anyways, that was it. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments, man. Make sure to go check out my other teams. Make sure to be on the lookout for the other teams I'm going to be doing in the near future. And let me know any more videos you want me to react to in the comments. I love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Remember to keep it real. Real is rare. Real always reaches everyone. Next time. Peace.